I think everyone should have a VA. It's like $5 an hour or like $6 an hour. And they are phenomenal. Like if you can get a good one, it's unbelievable, man. Like take so much off your plate.
Welcome to the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Axel Ragnarsson, and on this show, I dissect how seasoned multifamily investors started, built, and scaled their businesses. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. In this episode, I'm chatting with Ryan Corcoran, who has actually been on the show before. He's an investor that's based in New England who has an immense amount of experience going direct to seller to find multifamily deals and to find any type of real estate deal. He does a lot of single family house flips and assignments as well. He's built a portfolio of hundreds of multifamily units. He's done hundreds of flips. He is incredibly well versed in the world of multifamily, or I should say, marketing directly to multifamily owners. And in this episode, we just dive into what that process looks like for him. We talk about what he sends on the direct mail side, how often he mails, where he mails, how he's built his team to actually deal with all of the leads that are coming in and all of the deals that they're doing. They're going to do over 60, 70 deals this year. And we dive into what the actual personnel looks like within his business to just handle that volume. And then we spend a lot of time as well talking about conceptually how you need to approach growing a multifamily portfolio if you don't have income coming in from elsewhere, whether that's from a business, a high-paying job, some kind of transactional real estate business. And I think it's a really helpful conversation for multifamily investors that are really in the trenches right now, trying to grow a portfolio, but they're struggling with where to bring cash into the business to keep fueling the engine within the vehicle, so to speak. So great episode for everybody out there that either is A, currently marketing direct to seller to find deals, or B, is looking to do so and wants to figure out exactly how to start doing so. Ryan's a wealth of information. He's a great guy. This is a great episode and highly encourage everyone to listen to this all the way through. And if you took something away from this episode, if you learned something, please consider leaving the show a rating and review. And if you really want to show some love, send it to somebody in your network that you think would enjoy it as well. But again, thanks for listening, and let's get to this conversation with Ryan Corcoran. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. Joining me for the second time on the show is Ryan Corcoran, Specialized Property Group based down in Rhode Island. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I'm sure I talked about it in the intro, but be sure to go back and listen to that one as well, because we spent a lot of time talking about how you can find deals off market, direct to seller, basically how you can build your pipeline. And we're going to spend some time in this episode chatting about that as well. But you got to be sure to listen to the first one too. So I'll link to that in the show notes. But as it relates to this episode, Ryan, why don't you give everybody a quick backstory on yourself for those of you that missed that first podcast that we recorded? Share, where you're living, what you're up to, maybe how you found the real estate business, and what your business looks like today.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we went in deep on this on the first time I was on here, but essentially just very high level. I went to school, got my master's degree as a PA. I practiced in ICU for a couple of years. During that time, I started buying small multifamily, flipped a couple of properties, realized I was, spending a lot more time doing that than I was medicine, and I enjoyed it more. I was making more money. I liked the idea of building a business aspect of it versus, the W-2 life. So I transitioned full time. I want to say about 4 years ago or so. So I've been out of medicine for about 4 years. And started buying multifamily properties, like I said, small multi, then it grew to, 5 unit, 6 unit. Then we did larger portfolios, 10, 12, and then we did a, 60 unit portfolio, et cetera, et cetera. And then, interest rates kind of changed about 2 years ago or so. So I started to pivot away from the buy and hold model completely. We still do some of it, but that was everything before. Now it's much more transactional. With the market still being really hot, prices still increasing, lack of inventory, the flip game has really taken off. With that said, we just bought a 10 unit, just bought a 23 unit. We have another 80 unit under contract. So we're still doing larger multifamily buy and hold deals, but I would say we're going to do close to 60 or 70 deals this year, and most of them are flips. And so yeah, that's where I'm at now. I grew up in Massachusetts, moved to Rhode Island. Now I'm actually back in Massachusetts. I've got a 6-month-old, so I'm taking advantage of the childcare with my family being local. But yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Love it, man. No, I mean that's there's a lot that we're going to talk about here, but I mean we're just going to dive right into the marketing components of what you have going on. And I'll probably ask you some questions about how you're managing all of this in terms of deal
Yeah.
sourcing and then executing all of the deals that you're finding. I mean 60,
Mhm.
70 deals a year. That's a lot of work, both transactionally and then from an execution standpoint. But let's just talk about marketing. It's funny. I get your newsletters every month that you send out. I think I replied to, maybe it was the last one, where I was just like, "How are you staying sane with everything that you have going on?" But I know you do a lot of direct mail. I know we talked a lot about the direct mail strategy on the first episode, but talk to me about what the marketing approach is nowadays. Is it mail? Is it some other strategies? What are you focusing on? What are you leveraging?
Yeah, so we still do direct mail. I mean, I've been doing direct mail since I was 22 years old. It's been seven, almost 8 years now of direct mail. And I don't think I'll stop it unless we see a drastic fall off of mail just not working. But by far, whether it's multifamily buy and hold, wholesaling, flipping, whatever it is, mail always has the largest return for us. Now maybe because that's just we're good at it, or we've been doing it for a long time and it's consistency, right? But like for example, last week we just we did a $40,000 wholesale because of a piece of direct mail that wasn't even supposed to go to that specific person. Got somewhere down the line, landed at someone's house, and we ended up buying the house, right? So like stuff like that happens all the time. Where other marketing channels you don't necessarily get that. So direct mail being one, we do PPC. So we have Google Ads, and that's really for your distressed home, your distressed homeowners, or tired landlords, people who really just want to kind of like, whether they're in pre-foreclosure, they inherited a home, whatever it might be. That's actually worked out really well. We've done 6 deals so far this year, so a little over one a month. So not amazing, but pretty good. It is expensive, but it, when those leads come in, we call those inbound leads, right? So those inbound leads are very motivated when we pick up the phone. So really, it's when you get that lead, it's just execution timing. So if you're the fastest one to it, if you're the first one out there, you're the quickest one to make an offer, you're professional, you have a very high, likelihood of getting that deal. And then a lot of it, the rest of it, honestly, man, is referrals and, people we know and then agents. So between those 3 to 4 channels, that's the bulk of it. Every now and then we'll do, cold email, cold calling, but it's very, very specific. We don't blast out text. We don't cold call thousands and thousands of records, and we don't cold email thousands of people. It's very specific on who we do the cold outreach to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, to dive into the direct mail component a little bit more, because as you mentioned, right, PPC is a little bit more
Yep.
oriented to the single family homeowners, the people that
Yep.
just, inherited their aunt's house, what have you, right? That's a little bit
Mhm.
more transactional. But if we're going to talk multifamily and iron it in there, or dial it in there, I should say, same mail piece across single family, small multi, large multi, are you using different mail pieces?
Sure. So if we're going to focus specifically on multifamily, most of the single family is just it's postcards, right? So it's mostly just like, here's your, call us for a quick offer, we
Yep.
can solve your problem, etc. The multifamily ones are much, much different. I've never sent a postcard to a multifamily owner. I've never sent a generic card that just says like, hey, we're a home buyer, or hey, I'm a local investor. Like it's in my experience, every direct mail piece that's landed to a larger multifamily property owner who we've bought a deal from has been extremely personal. And what I mean by that is not just like, hey, so and so, are you interested in selling? It's like, hey, so and so, I see you own this property in certain city. I own X in that city. I'm very familiar with the area. I'd love to have a call. Blah 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 blah. Right? Kind of elaborate a little bit. Nothing too lengthy, but it looks like I've really targeted to that specific person, and we quite literally have, right? And so that's given us the best bang for the buck. It's always been white letters. Like I'll type up a letter and then I'll sign my, in blue ink, or whatever it is, and I'll write on the outside in blue ink, and then I'll put a return label on a white envelope. Nothing is like yellow letter. There's no orange or fucking, sorry, excuse my language, but
No
like
worries.
blue envelopes being sent out, or green or whatever. Like it's very, very, when someone goes to the mailbox and they open up the mailbox and it's just a white letter with their name, it looks like it's been, created just for them, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the experience we want to give.
So you're doing DIY for your mail that you're sending to multis. Are you outsourcing in some
So
capacity?
we don't do DIY. So we use open letter marketing, but they've been extremely great with taking personalization we want to put into it and making it super simple for us. So
Yep.
um, some of it is DIY if it's specific property, but a lot of it is, we'll pull the list of absentee owners over 6 units, living out of state or in state, whatever the criteria we put together. We'll craft a personal letter that we're able to send to all of them, and then they'll be able to mail it out for us.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. And I mean, you're obviously pursuing deals in a number of different areas. I think well, at least this is the last time we spoke, this was the
Yeah.
case, right? You were looking for deals in New Hampshire and Rhode Island and Massachusetts.
Mhm.
You were assigning some, buying some. I mean, they were kind of employing different strategies in all these different markets. Is that still the case? Are you still blanketing multiple different states, or are
Yeah.
you a little bit
So
more targeted now?
Yeah, so Rhode Island, I would say the majority of Rhode Island is transactional. So I
Mhm.
don't have any holds anymore. I sold everything in Rhode Island. Massachusetts, I have some in the Worcester County area, Gardner, just outside Greater Boston. And then New
Yep.
Hampshire, I have a decent amount in New Hampshire still. So we still kind of go, that Laconia and southern New Hampshire, and then the Worcester County area in Massachusetts. And then I would buy and hold in Rhode Island if the right one came across. But like I said, a lot of that's been transactional in Rhode Island.
How do you determine whether or not you're going to hold something, flip something, assign some? I mean, obviously with the single families, we're probably flipping, assigning those, right?
Mhm,
They don't make
mhm,
sense to buy and hold as rentals in New England,
mhm.
just in any state. But, on the small to larger multi side, how are you determining what you're actually going to do with that specific property?
So I'll be completely honest with you. Initially, I wanted to hold everything, and I thought like buying and holding was like the way to go or the only way to go. It's all I knew, right? And then I realized that I was getting all these leads, and I was kind of just letting them go. And you spend marketing dollars, right? And so eventually, I don't know why I didn't think of this at the beginning, but eventually I was like, what if I could like do something with these other leads? Like, how do I monetize them? Can I get a referral fee, or can I wholesale them, or whatever it might be? And so once I started doing a lot of flips and wholesales, I started to have a lot of active income. And I immediately realized that I'm going to have a huge tax problem. And so the buy and hold game became I'm going to hold the best ones and I'm going to use them as a huge tax write-off. I'm going to cost segregate them. I'm going to do everything I can to depreciate the heck out of them to wipe off my gains from the flips and wholesales. So to answer your question, and I don't have like a specific number that we try to hit. It's not a specific return. It's like, okay, like how well capitalized am I right now? What do I have in the pipeline? Um, Sorry about that. So what do we
No
have in the
worries.
pipeline? How well capitalized am I? And then, how much capital am I going to need going forward? And then in the back of my mind, it's like, all right, how much taxes am I going to have to pay at the end of the year? And so if we have a really strong year on the active income, we're going to hold more of these multifamilies that we come across. If not so much, then maybe we'll flip them off or assign them. But I try to, at minimum, buy at least 3 to 4 larger multifamilies each year. And what I mean by
Yep.
that is like, north of $1 million a piece, right? On average, if I buy $1 million piece of property, I can take close to 300 grand, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, and depreciate that in the first year. So that allows me to go make 300 grand elsewhere and be at net zero. So if I can buy 3 to 4 of those a year, I'm in decent shape. So
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. Yeah, so it seems as if it's more what the business needs or what you personally need at
yeah,
any given point
yeah.
in time versus attributes of that specific deal or the market or what have you.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't buy anything that's turnkey. So like everything has to be value add. So the first couple of years, like I said, all I did was buy, and hold, right? And so I got really good at like knowing how to buy something, go in, do all the work, refinance, and basically have no money left in the deal, right? And so I still won't buy a deal unless it meets that criteria. Like I'm not going to go sink 300 or 400 grand into a property and have it stuck there. Like it just doesn't
Yeah,
make sense. So we still look for value add. It still has to be a heavy, fairly heavy lift. Whether 50, 60% of the units need to be turned over, the rents are super low, whatever it might be. And go in and do the value add.
for sure. Now, again, you just mentioned 60 some odd deals this year, 60 to 70 this year. I mean, I know you've been on that pace for a while. You've been doing dozens and dozens and dozens of deals a year for a number of years now. Um, that's not easy to manage. I mean, we're in the process right now. We'll probably do 20, 30 deals this year, most of them being kind of 4, 5, 6 plus units. Probably do a couple hundred units this year between 30, 40 buildings. And, I feel at times overwhelmed, even though I do have a full-time acquisitions manager on staff to
Yep.
help with the transactional process, to help actually manage a lot of that inbound lead flow. And you're doing 2x that, right? What is your either your team look like? Any processes or systems? How involved are you personally in the sales process, the follow-up process, the CRM, all that stuff? Maybe just talk about in
Sure.
general, organizationally, what it looks like.
Yeah, so for a while it was just me, like the first couple of years. And I remember the first time I came on here, you were like, dude, like, how are you doing this? Like, I was
I was
like,
like shocked. I was like, dude,
I was
I
like, I
actually don't
don't
know how you're
know.
doing this. Yeah.
I literally didn't know what I was doing, honestly. And then I pulled in a kind of like an assistant, I guess you could say, and a VA. So I had an assistant and a VA for a while. And then I pulled in another VA. So I have one VA doing most like the CRM, the back end stuff. I have another VA who's doing all the list scrubbing. So I'll say, hey Lyra, I need, we want to do multifamily, et cetera, right? So she'll go through, she'll pull all the lists, she'll scrub it, make sure the LLCs are correct, make sure that's the right owner. So she's doing all the back end stuff. She does it for the multifamily side and the single family and small multi-flip and wholesale side. So I have those two. My wife Kristen has been a huge help over the last year or so. Since we had our kid, she's kind of pulled into the business a little bit, kind of doing a lot of the back end stuff, whether it's, paying checks, doing accounting, doing admin stuff. So, releasing that from me was huge. Before that, I had another full-time admin, and we actually have I have another full-time accounting and admin right now. She just came on about 2 months ago or so. So she's handling all of the accounting, everything in QuickBooks. I don't see any of that stuff anymore, which really frees me up to do what I do best, which is acquisition. Um, who else do we have? We have a project manager. So
I was going to ask
so
about
our
that. That was like
PM.
60 flips or
Yeah,
however
so
many specific out of those deals are flips. That's a lot of project management. Yeah.
so our PM, he's good. He's really good at running a project once it's under agreement. But before then, it's still me. Like, to be totally honest with you, I'm still doing the acquisition. But I like that aspect of it. And so at some point, I'm probably going to get sick of it, and I'll probably want to replace myself out of that position. But I enjoy that part of it. And then property manager, I have a property manager for all the multis. So I don't do a whole lot in the multifamily realm. I'm not super hands-on. I have a partner on a good amount of those, and he owns the property management company. So, really it's, I'll find a deal where we'll acquire it together and he'll take on the management of it. And so I'm blessed in the fact that I don't have to deal with many multifamily properties. So the majority of my time is spent, direct to seller, whether it's on the phone or in person. So.
hmm Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah. So number of admins, you have people helping on the accounting side, VAs doing kind of various different things, and then a project manager, right? I think that was the big thing for me was with that sheer volume of flips, even even though you have a partner involved in the multifamily component of the business, or
Yeah.
there's third party management involved at that part, there's still a lot of construction to manage,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah.
obviously is a real core components of the success of a deal like that, regardless of what you pay. Obviously, successful
Oh,
construction
100%.
management is critical.
100%.
Um, so, I want to go back to like the fact that you're marketing in different areas here. So, um, you lived in Rhode Island. You currently live in Mass. You're currently buying flips in Rhode Island. You're currently buying flips and multis in Mass. You're buying multis
Yep.
up in New Hampshire. Is there a difference in what you're marketing for in each of these markets, and is there a reason for that? And I guess maybe like let me clarify in terms of there's different landlord tenant laws in each state. There's
Yeah.
you're personally closer to buildings in Massachusetts right now,
Yep.
so you could probably
Yep.
get in front of a seller more often. Like, how do you think about the lists and who you're actually marketing to in all of these different markets?
Yeah, dude, you just nailed it. When I moved to Rhode Island, I acquired a lot in Rhode Island. When I moved back to Mass, I started acquiring back, a lot in Mass. And I think that's just based on, I'm local. It's easy. It's much easier to manage, easier to go on an appointment. Um, with that said, I don't do many transactional deals in New Hampshire. And what I do like about New Hampshire is the multifamily buy and hold play, and I always have. I think your price per unit is more favorable up there. The landlord tenant laws are more favorable up there. Um, Project management is more favorable up there. Permit pulling is more like everything is
Yeah.
easier. Everything is easier in New Hampshire. And I still think it's pretty heavily overlooked by a lot of investors. And so there's still, I mean, I know it's been probably what 7 or 8 years since New Hampshire kind of took off or has still been taking off, but dude, there's still so much opportunity in southern New Hampshire, even up to like, Pittsfield area. Like there's tons of opportunity in New Hampshire still. Um, Whereas you go into Massachusetts, like I think Worcester was like top 5 in the country for rent growth, right? So like everyone knows about Worcester. It's not easy to get a deal in Worcester. The prices are super overinflated. Um, and so, it's more challenging to get a deal. And then, Rhode Island specifically, I think Rhode Island might be even more challenging than Massachusetts in some ways because it's such a small state. And really the only city you have is Providence, right? And
Yeah.
Providence is like the big hub. Um, so I hope that kind of answers your question. I would say that majority of the transactional businesses are businesses Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and then Mass and New Hampshire. I do, but the buy and hold play.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I know a lot of guys in Mass or who live in the Boston area that they do the same thing, right? They're either developing or doing condo conversions
Yeah,
or flipping homes or whatever in the greater Boston area, and they're taking all that money and they're pouring it into buy and holds in New Hampshire.
yeah,
Because your stabilized yields and your just the cap rates are higher, stabilized yields are higher. It makes a little bit more sense, especially now with higher interest rates. It's
yep,
easier to find positive leverage up there.
yep.
Um, what are you seeing? I mean, this is unrelated to multifamily, but I'm curious because you're a seller of a lot of single family residences, obviously, 'cause you're flipping homes.
Hmm.
Have you seen that market slow down at all? Because my assumption would be maybe a little bit, but probably not that much over the last 18 months
Yeah,
since it started going up.
super town specific, honestly. Like
Yeah.
we just listed one in Groton, Mass, and within 2 days we had a $40,000 over asking price. We listed one in um, Providence, sold it for $40,000 over asking. So like very area dependent and
Yep.
town specific. Versus I have one in Pawtucket, Rhode Island that it took me 6 months to freaking sell. So like it's very what I'm trying to do now is stay in only nice areas. With interest rates high, with not that I don't, I'm still not convinced that real estate is gonna stay like this for a while. Like in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking like it's so expensive. Like I just don't know how people are affording this stuff, but things keep flying off the shelf. Like as long as you're in a strong market. So most of the deals we're doing are in your upper, not I wouldn't say high class, but mid level to upper
Yeah. Like
class.
median home price or above type of
Correct.
range. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And again, it just comes down to buying it at the right price. Like you're not going to go in and buy something at 90% ARV and then hope to win, right? You're going to buy it at 50 or 60% ARV and then, then you have room. So
hmm
yeah.
What do you think? Like, what's maybe not what's next for you, but like, is there an end game for you in being in this business? Do you want to build a large multifamily portfolio? Stop doing flips? Do you like the flipping business, or is there some other end game for you?
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer for it because I started
I don't
off
either, if
I
you would ask
started
me.
off buying multifamily and it was great. But then when I started doing flips, I started to see a lot of active income that I never had before. Like,
Yeah,
and so now, I went from kind of feeling broke for a long time, even though my net worth was climbing and I was getting wealthier. I didn't really feel it because you don't really benefit from those projects until you
yeah, you're
do
cash
the
poor.
project. Yeah, and then refinance out. So I was always very cash poor and it was super stressful. And now I'm on the flip side of it where I'm doing a ton of flips and I have a ton of active income. And it's fantastic. I like it. I'm much less stressed when it comes down to, being capitalized. However, it's exhausting, dude. Like it's a ton of work, right? For good reason, right? I mean, like, so I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I like both, and like I said, we talked about earlier. I still buy multis. I think the real game is find a way to make a good amount of money actively, and then buy multis and wipe off the gain, and just do that for a while. You're going to build your net worth up. You're going to keep having the active income, and then if you can replace yourself from that active income, whether it's a plumbing company, electrical company, whatever you're doing and then just deploy the capital into multis.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the reality is it's really hard to build a multifamily portfolio if that's all you're doing and there's
Yep.
not money coming in from other sources. Like it's just hard to do that. And I'm speaking from experience. Like we
Yeah.
were doing something similar on the same trajectory, and then as you started maybe spending a little bit more time flipping homes or being a little bit more transactional, assigning some stuff, like I was thinking about, do I go down that road or do I start raising some money and trying to pick
Yep.
up a couple of acquisition fees and putting less of
Yep.
my own money in deals and trying to get into promotes and all of that. And it's like, that's the road I went down, but there has to be some decision, right? You kind of hit a fork in the road where it's like, I got to start either being more transactional or I got to do something else, whether it's
Yep.
brokering deals or whether it's doing some kind of
Yep.
consulting. For some people, it's starting an educational program or whatever. Like you need
Yep.
money coming in because you're right. I mean, at some point, even if you're buying deals at the right price and you're hitting big cash out refis, the bank account is going from so razor thin to flush and then back to razor thin and then flush and then
Dude.
back to razor.
Yep.
It's so hard. It's impossible to be in the middle, right?
Yep.
Which makes life a little bit more stressful. So,
Yep.
yeah, I feel like a lot of folks that are in multifamily that want to grow a portfolio, they don't really realize that until they're in the trenches actually doing it.
I
Um,
honestly would go so far to say like it's almost unrealistic to be able to just like continuously scale only a multifamily business without having some sort of other income. Because I don't know how. I mean, I just don't know how you do it. I mean, I tried it for a while. It worked for a while, but even still, it's just like, man, like how do you make money? Like you don't actually make money until the thing is stabilized, and then you get cash flow, and then you can refinance. But like a lot of times, it's 24 months down the road.
yeah,
Depending on the project. And then you got capital that you raise and you're paying out interest only debt. It's a game that is fantastic for the long term, and I will never stop doing it. But I do strongly suggest anybody who I really think you need to have something active as well to be able to
yeah.
support it at the very minimum.
I was having lunch with a guy who owns like 1,100 units in New Hampshire all himself. And he's in his 70s. He's been doing it for 40 years, like
Yeah.
insanely successful by every metric, at least financially.
Yep.
And I asked him kind of the same question because he had never done anything, like he quit his job to go buy multis, and this is in like the 80s or something like that. And he basically, we had like a version of this same conversation. I was like, how did you like get it off the ground and get it rolling? He's like, well, it took me 20 years to get to like a couple hundred, and I lived in a two-bedroom house with my wife and two kids, and I drove a Toyota Camry or whatever he said.
Yeah.
And he's like, I was worth eight figures and I was living in a house that somebody who makes 60 grand a year should be
Yep.
living in. And
Yep.
then I finally allowed myself to sell a couple. He's like, I just kicked the compounding so far down the road that, and he kind of spoke about, he's like, yeah, I probably should have maybe not done that and enjoyed some of the fruits of my labor a little bit earlier. But that's like the only way to do it. Just mathematically speaking, is to approach it with that level of diligence and being so hypersensitive about not taking anything off the table. And then decades down the line, the hockey stick takes off. But um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not easy to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Unless you're
I'm a
generating
huge
big dough elsewhere.
I'm a huge proponent of living well below your means and being smart with finances. But I'm also very realistic in the fact that like any of us could be dead tomorrow. So like if you're gonna work to build this massive empire, like I would prefer to work a little harder and have an active business on the side where I'm not super stressed for 15 years, right? Even if I'm not able to buy as many multis during that period, at least I'm able to, like be a little less stressed through that period. So I just think you can have both, but if you're gonna focus only on multi, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be real challenging for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's a totally different topic of conversation
Completely.
too. And I think, well, anyone I know who's in like their 60s and their 70s who's worth like whatever it is, dumb money, 50 million, 60 million bucks, whatever it is, however
Yep.
you define that. They're like, yeah, there's no difference in being worth 50 versus 75. And
Of
the difference
course.
is I could have
Yeah.
spent a little bit more money in my 20s and my
Yeah.
30s or whatever. So I think a lot of people agree with that. But it's finding that balance between how do we
Yeah,
defer or
absolutely.
delay gratification and get something off the ground and get the snowball rolling in a
Yep.
meaningful way.
Yep.
But in general, so because I want to round this out
Yeah.
with a real tactical question, which is like, what are some tools, resources, softwares that you rely on that you would define as critical to your business, right? Maybe two or three come to mind right off the top of your head, that are actually, really helping you manage everything that you got going on a day-to-day basis.
All right. I think the first one, and I'm going to target this more towards multifamily because
Yep.
that's what, you're the crux of the show, right? I think everyone should have a VA. Like it's like $5 an hour or like $6 an hour. And they are phenomenal. Like if you can get a good one, it's unbelievable, man. Like it takes so much off your plate. They can run your CRM. VA is the first one. CRM is the second one, and then you've got to have some sort of property data software, whether you're using PropStream or CoStar or Reonomy or there's a new one out now. I think it's free. It's called PropWire. Like so, so you got to have a VA to be able to manage a lot of the things that you can't, whether all the back end stuff. Even simple like, can you make an Instagram post for me, right? Like just little things like that. I think you've got to have a VA because it offloads a lot of those, $5-6 an hour tasks. The CRM is huge because if you don't have a CRM and you're doing any sort of volume in marketing whatsoever, you're going to forget stuff. So everything has to be input, conversations recorded, notes put on everything, phone numbers, emails, names, everything can be recorded in there. And then from there, you can just set up automation. So what we do is, we'll get a lead in. If it doesn't turn out to be a hot lead or whatever right away, we'll put it into our CRM and then we'll have a follow up every 3 months. And then we'll say like, okay, like letter went out X date. We want to follow up X date from now, and we'll be able to put it in an automation. And then my VA can go in and add it to the next list that we're going to mail out, through open letter marketing. And so the automation is huge. And then having some sort of data to be able to pull data from, especially in the multifamily space, because it's really difficult to find multifamily property unless you've got some sort of property data software that you're able to use.
Yeah, 100%. Where did you find your VA? Was it an agency, your direct hire?
No, I've had her for 4 years, and she came from not Upwork. Upwork.
Nice.
I went through 7 of them in about a week. Like it was like I hired a new one every day, and I asked a very simple task, and this sounds awful, but like if the task wasn't done the way I wanted it, or like basically I gave him a list and I said, look,
Yeah.
cold call these numbers and I'm going to listen in. And I just listened to the call, and the first thing I could tell is like, if I was on the other line, would I want to listen to this, listen to the VA talk and like, is there a way that I would be able to communicate with this person? And a lot of them, it was really challenging. And so I'm not saying that they were bad VAs by any means, but for what I wanted them for, it just wasn't a good fit. And then, the 7th one hopped on there and she just killed it, like immediately just crushed it. I'm like, all right, that's who we're going with. And since then, it's just been great. Like every task thrown at her, she just handles it and just, it's amazing. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the front lines of you should be embracing global talent in some capacity, regardless
Yeah.
of what you're doing, whether you're a business owner, whether it's you personally as a highly successful individual, which are a lot of the folks listening to this show, even just for personal stuff, which is something that I still have yet to do, and I will probably do at some point. But like, even 20 hours a week, like it's not hard if you start tracking your time to find 20 hours a week that you can actually look for some help with. And specifically as it relates to acquisitions, which a lot of it is very process oriented work. For example, like messaging owners who put up ads for rent, like messaging for rent ads, right? That's a deal sourcing strategy. It's pretty, mind numbing if you're going to be spending a lot of your own personal time doing that, but it's like the most textbook, like this is a perfect role or perfect task for a VA to just do 5 hours a week of, right, in all of your target markets. And the next thing you know, you got 4 hours a week of just start sending emails to owners on our data list. And there you go. Now you're up to 9-10 hours. And then you do this. Next thing you know, you're at 20 hours and you've built a deal funnel that somebody else has ownership of and where you're just managing the inbound leads. It's not hard to really do this, and it's not a significant investment. If you can spend 500 to $1,000 a month, you're going to, you're probably going to 10x that in a year if they're working on the right
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
um,
The other thing I would
totally
say
agree.
on those lines, dude, like create a Loom account and then go onto Craigslist and look up the for rent ads. Create a Loom video. It'll record your screen, everything you're doing. I'm what property I'm looking for. Okay, this looks like it's distressed. Here's how you find their email. Okay, we're gonna go do an email. We're gonna literally type the email. Here's the email I want composed. This is what I want said. Said. Press send. Now they have this Loom video on literally exactly what to do every single week. And so now it's just a checklist item, right? So I really think that VAs are great for checklists. So if you can build a weekly checklist, a monthly checklist, whatever it is, if it's acquisitions, if it's admin, marketing, whatever it might be, if you can build a checklist for them, you'll quickly realize like, okay, yeah, like that's 3 hours of my week that I just saved going on. Even just something so mind numbing as going on Zillow and just looking up the multifamily property that have been listed. Like they can pull a list for you and they can say, hey, look, based on the price per unit in this area, this looks like a half decent deal, right? And then they can send it to you. You just have to build a system for them. But
Yeah,
once you're able to do that, it's unbelievable. It frees up at least 20 hours a week, at least.
100%. Yeah, and I mean, it's funny when people ask me like what tool or whatever are you using like daily?
Yeah.
It's like Gmail, Google
Yeah.
Drive, like,
Gmail. Yeah.
whatever our CRM is, and then
Yep.
like Loom is probably in the top five, right? It's somewhere in
Yep.
that top five,
Yep.
literally every day. Whether it's, I'm sending a screen share to the customer service rep at the bank because my online bill pay doesn't work, which I literally just did before we hopped on this, or like anything related to delegating tasks to VAs. Like I use Loom every day. It's probably the best like $15 a month I spend or whatever it is now. Um, but no, this has been great, man. I want, one closing question for you before we wrap up here. For those owners, or I shouldn't say owners, for those investors who are maybe used to just going on the MLS, buying stuff a couple times a year that hits, but they really want to they want to start building a pipeline of off-market deals, and they want to actually get something going there in their business. Um, what is, I mean, obviously, let's assume, we talked about getting a list, we talked about direct mail, et cetera. Let's say they want to go send mail, they want to go pull a list. Like, what would you say is a great use of either A, their time, or B, a small budget of a few $100s a month from a marketing or time allocation standpoint? What do you think is going to be their best bang for their buck in terms of just getting this off the ground at a very small level?
Okay. So that's a tough question because I think when I started, it was much different than it is now. I mean, when I
Mm,
started, like the first literally what I did was I had a printer, pen, paper, Word, and I went on to PropStream and I pulled like, I'm sorry, list source at that time. And I'd go get super, a niche list like 6 to 8 units in Worcester, Massachusetts. Owners have owned it for more than 10 years, absentee owned, live out of state. And I would have like maybe like 80 properties, right? In the
yeah.
whole city. And that's it, like just those 80 properties. And I would just hammer, like writing letters, month after month, finding their emails, direct emailing them. And I still think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
So the reason for that is number one, you show persistency. You're gonna be consistent at it because you don't have a huge list. You have to get really personal with it because you can't offload that. You can't offload 80 to 100 letters. And so I would probably do something similar. I'd probably go direct to seller still. I don't think the agent in the multifamily space specifically, I think agent relationships are great, but I think it's a little bit more challenging to find that discounted deal through agents. Still to this day, I think even now more so because they're just so inflated. So that's what I would do. I would get PropStream or Reonomy, get on there, get really hyper focused on a location, pull everything on that list. I do maybe people have owned it for longer than 10 years, individual owners, maybe out of state owners. Um, yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
way to
No, I completely agree. And anytime I've been asked that question, and I kind of asked it to you in a bit of a vague way, but it's like if you have a full-time job, maybe you got 5, 10 hours a week to dedicate
go.
to this after work, you got a few $100 you're willing to spend. It's like, okay, with those parameters, a very targeted list of owners that are going to be the most likely to sell, generally speaking, and hitting them in a few different ways, maybe sending them emails, giving them a call, and then handwritten letters, and just going really deep into that list and really committing to follow up post, any calls you get or any conversations you have. It's going to be the best use of your time. And you'll probably see results if you do it, even with a small list of 100, 150 people for a long period of time.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
I think I think that's the way to go. So, because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this going, this all sounds good, but like, how do I actually like, what's the first couple of steps here? And I think that helps a lot of folks.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
on a small budget, that's definitely the way to go. On a little bit of a larger budget, like if you can squeeze like 2 grand out, like which is a lot, I know, but if
yeah.
you can quadruple to 4x your marketing, and you can get a lot more opportunities pretty quickly by just widening up your geographical location. And honestly, that's kind of the name of the game for anybody who is just starting and wants to know, like, okay, like I've done one deal, two deals, how do I get to the next one? You just have to increase your marketing. Like you have to increase your outreach. Otherwise, you're not going to get more leads.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that. It's pretty much a dial you turn at that point. So
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It's kind of maintaining the balance between, okay, we're going to increase spend, and then I also
yep,
need to make sure I'm increasing my capacity to service the leads and to
correct. Yep.
do the follow up, right? I think that, and that obviously, so it's not anything I'm telling you, but for like the listener, right? I think it's yes, you can turn that up, but even if you go from spending or sending 300 letters to 3,000 letters, and
Oh,
you
you're gonna
get
be inundated, dude.
you're gonna let's say you get 10x the phone calls. Like you got to make sure you're still picking up all those phone calls. And you got to make sure you're
100%.
following up, and you got to make sure you're getting the offers out and all that, right?
Yeah, and I
Something that I
think
think a lot of people end up struggling with. Yeah.
even more underrated than that is like you have to like the rapport you're building with these sellers is the most important thing when you get that lead. And so if you're on the phone and you're just like, oh my God, I've got so many leads coming in, I don't even have time. Like you're gonna blow leads because it takes like, dude, like how many deals have you followed up with that have taken 3 years to close? Like I'm doing
Yeah.
one right now. We're supposed to close next month. It's been 2.5 years of following up with this guy. Like 2.5 freaking years. I've been at lunch, dinner, probably 35 hours of time I've spent with this guy, and it's finally going to close 2.5 years later. And so if you're super inundated and if you don't have time, you're never going to have that, you're never going to be able to build that rapport with that seller. So
Mhm.
again, start small, build a niche list, hit them from calling, emailing, mail, and just, go that route.
Yeah, I mean that's something that my acquisitions guy Justin and I talk about all the time where it's like, he's a younger dude, right? It's just like less experience in the game. And I was telling him like the best deals I've bought are the ones that take 2, 3, 4 years to materialize. We
Yep.
just, or we didn't just close. We're closing one tomorrow. Small portfolio with somebody who's been talking to on and off for 9, 10 months. Which is kind of like the longest cycle that he's been a part of, and he's just like, wow, it's surprising to see it take that long. But I think something that we always talk about too, and is always important to remember if you're in the direct to seller game, is you're very rarely ever going to convince somebody to sell, if ever.
Yep.
Somebody who has not considered selling and doesn't have interest in selling isn't going to be convinced to sell, even if you're sweet talk and you build killer rapport. Like there has to be external factors or other
Yep.
factors in their life or business that push them to sell, whether it's the I want to retire, or whether it's, I want to go put this money into something else, or my partnership is kind of shaky and I'd rather just sell and we can dissolve it. But the whole name of the direct to seller game is just being present along the way at various different times so that you're the call when they actually do go to
Yep.
sell.
Yep.
And I've
Exactly.
been on the other side of it too, where I've chatted with people on and off for a couple of years, but a number of months has gone by and the timing was right for them. And then somebody else just happened to be in contact with them more recently and they were the call, right? So it's, and you kind of learn through those types of scenarios as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anyways,
Yep.
you're aware of all this stuff. I'm not telling you anything, but
Oh, 100%, man. That's the name of the game. It's all about timing.
yeah,
So,
exactly. Um, Listen, man, this has been great. I think a lot of folks are going to take some really tactical tips away from this, which is obviously our objective here in recording this. But if folks want to reach out to you, whether they're in Mass or whether they're in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, maybe they got a deal for you. Whether they want to chat with you about what you're doing on the direct to seller side of the business in general, where can they reach out to you?
yeah, social media is probably the easiest way. Facebook, Instagram, RJCORCORAN08. That's at both of those. So I do my best to look at all the messages and reply. So if you have a deal, if you have any questions, anything I said that you want clarification on, if I can squeeze some time, I'm happy to explain it to you a little more. So
Love it, man. Thanks for the time. And as always, I always learning something from you because you're doing this even at a bigger scale than we are from a direct to seller standpoint. So, I always take
yeah,
stuff away
no,
from
I
our
appreciate
chats.
it, man. Appreciate
Appreciate
it,
it.
and I enjoy coming on here.
Absolutely, man. We'll have a good rest of the week.
All right, you too.